Hello everyone, I am back again recording another video for the We Gonna Be Alright series. Just really trying to be consistent and committed to doing my part and just helping keep the body, helping keep the kingdom encouraged. One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention or maybe remind you of today, if you're struggling to keep this in mind, is that whenever you're in a situation or whenever a situation presents itself that can at times seem like it's hopeless, or when a situation presents itself where it's like you've been caught between a rock and a hard place, that it's always a setup and it's the perfect space for God to be able to get the glory. Because when you're in a space where it seems like nothing's moving on this side of you, nothing's moving on that side of you, and you're stuck in between and there's nowhere for you to go, the only person that you're able to turn to and look to is God. And in that situation, literally the only person who can get and who can take credit for the delivering and the deliverance of that situation is God, because God is the only being that has the power to free you and liberate you from between two things that just seem like they won't move. We're currently in a situation, with this pandemic that's going on, where it seems like every time we turn our head, every time we take a breath, stuff is just heating up. 1 minute we see a report that says numbers are rising. 1 minute you see a report that says numbers are lowering. So there's uncertainty, in that place. And then even still with, our regulations and our laws constantly being heightened to the point where we can't gather, period, unless it's with people that that you live with. It puts you in a really tough space and a really tough position. But just rest assured that this is a setup for God's glory to be seen and to be witnessed within all of the earth. This is a setup for people who don't believe and to look and see that God is good, and to look and see that there's nothing impossible for God and that there's nothing that He can't do. It's important to remember that in this situation, although, God is definitely focusing on individuals and He's definitely working in us as people, just as ourselves, being alone, being in isolation, being secluded. And of course, that's awesome. Definitely one of the purposes in this. But it's about more than just us. It's about us reaching, the people who have yet to come to believe. Because the glory of God is like a light. The glory of God is a light, and the light shines so bright. And the tougher and the more impossible a situation is, the greater amount of glory God gets. Therefore, the greater the light is revealed in that situation. The light of God, the glory of God, it's illuminated and it's magnified. The more intense, or in layman's terms, sucky the situation is, because these people on the outside will look at you, and how you go through the situation, and they'll also look at you when you come out of the situation. And as they're watching, going through the situation, they still see you, moving and working according to faith, and, engaging in interacting with, the things that God has for you to do, and not allowing yourself, to be overcome with anxiety, not allowing yourself to be overcome and paralyzed by fear, not allowing yourself to fall into the pit of depression and things like that. While meanwhile, the world is doing those exact things. They'll look at you and they're going to wonder what's different. But then, Lord willing, you're living your life and your life is witnessing, so I know you're a believer. They'll attribute that thing, they'll attribute that peace, they'll attribute that productivity, even in a time that could really suffocate you if you let it, to the presence of God in your life. So people watching you, they see God, and God is glorified in that. God is glorified in the way that you go through a situation. And then when they see you come out, and they see you coming out of a situation where people will be fortunate just to come out in their right mind, but they see you come out with something, you know, that you produced because of the presence of God in your life, and because your faith in God, and because your reliance in God, to be a mind regulator, to be your peace, you know, to be your hope, to be your strength in a time that's so difficult. You know, they'll see you come out with something, and again, they're going to attribute your ability to still do and still work and still move in this time to God, and God will get the glory through that. And in God getting the glory, people are going to be attracted to him. That's one of the things that God has been speaking to me and really showing me, is how this time period is really going to cause a lot of people to be attracted and to be drawn to him. One, just because of the fact that whenever a tragedy happens, people come flooding to the church. But also because they're going to want that peace, because they're going to see evidence through you, through how you're going through the situation, and through how you come out of the situation. They're going to see evidence of, you know, the peace of God, the power of God, and the fact that it's a real thing. Because if there's a whole group of people in the world who have not been able to maintain, and who have become stagnant and just paralyzed by fear during this time, versus a group and a body of believers, you know, people who proclaim and profess to have an all-powerful, almighty God, who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or think, who is able to keep our mind in perfect peace if we focus on him, you know, who we can bring all of our troubles to because he cares for us. You know, if they see in us and from out of us the product of us actually moving like we believe, you know, what we have professed and proclaimed, they're going to come flooding, and they're going to come running to Jesus, because they're going to want that too, because they see that the world's way doesn't work, but they're going to see by what we manifest and what is birthed in this time, that God is able, and that God really can keep you. And that this is not just something that we talk about. It's not just something that we babble on and on about. It's a real thing. Like, God is the real thing, and he's really able to do everything that we profess and proclaim him to be able to do. So I just wanted to come and encourage you guys to keep going, and to really be committed and submitted to the process of keeping yourself postured and keeping yourself positioned and doing whatever it is that you have to do in order to allow God to really be the authority over you, and to really just allow him to have his way in whatever way and however he wants to have his way in your life. We are definitely in an uncomfortable situation. I am not, you know, naive or numb to the feeling of the pressure of this situation, but the pressure is meant to crush you so that God can produce from within you what he's looking to produce, so that from within you can be birthed what God is looking to be birthed. Because there's a new version of you. Whenever you come to one version of yourself, there's always a new version. And in order for that new version to come out and to be produced, you have to be crushed. And in that crushing, you're also forced to be in a position to really rely on and to really depend on God. The word says, you know, his strength is made perfect in our weaknesses, but there is no room for God's strength to be manifested if at first, you know, there's not an area of weakness in your life that is presented to you. And right now we are definitely, I know I'm not the only one, in a position where, you know, our weaknesses are being highlighted. You know, our tendency to be anxious, our tendency to be fearful, our tendency to worry, you know, being prone to depression when things don't go the way that you want them to do, or when your sky is cloudy and you're stuck inside because of a virus that it seems like no one has any control over. You know, so I just had a brain fart. Thank you. it forces us into a position where we really have to, in those ways, room is made for the glory of God, for the strength of God, and I guess, also the glory of God in the end, to be manifested through us in those areas. And it puts us in a position where He really humbles us. And then God is really able to manifest His strength and manifest His power in us and in our lives in a way that goes beyond what He typically would be able to when we are just able to do everything for ourselves, and when we can just go out and solve our own problem. For God to really be able to get the glory and the fullness of which He's looking to get the glory, He had to put us in a position, and He had to put us in a situation where we couldn't do anything for ourselves, and we really had to submit and surrender to Him, because we literally don't have any other choice, so that when this is over, and even as we go through it, all glory has to go to God, because there has to be room for the glory of God to be manifested in your life. And in order for there to be room, sometimes He has to allow you to be brought to nothing, which for the most part, a lot of us have been. Rather it's jobs and finances, rather it's, the lack of freedom, when it seems like you don't really have the same you don't have the same ability to exercise your free will the way that we would normally, and being deprived of that, rather it manifests itself in that way, whatever it is. We're definitely in a situation right now that has become a space for the glory of God to be manifested in our lives. So I just really encourage you to seek God during this time, and don't focus on the fact that, you're in a situation you don't want to be in, but rather seek God for what it is that He wants to do through you and in your life during this time. Because as believers, we are responsible for giving God the glory. We are His witnesses. In Isaiah it says we are His witnesses. So we have a responsibility to witness, and to witness well, and to remain positioned and postured in such a way where we are effective witnesses. That is it for right now. That's it for today. I will definitely be back. I have so many things that are running through my head. I just have to get my thoughts together. I love you guys. Continue to stay encouraged. Be encouraged in the Lord. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Keep your mind focused. Look to the hills from which cometh your help, knowing that your help comes from the Lord. And we're going to be all right, and we are all going to make it out of this situation. Okay, and lastly, happy Resurrection Day. By His stripes, we are healed.